Hello, my name is David Santana, and today I'm going to be making a video about Emily Bernard's book, Black is the Body, and the fourth chapter called Mother on Earth. That is the fourth chapter. Yes. In her fourth chapter, Mother on Earth. So, in this chapter, Emily kind of sums up what it was like, the part of her life in which she decided to become a mother and how she went about that. She opens the chapter with a quote from the Bible where she says, "Behold, children are the heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb, a reward." So she's essentially alluding to this to kind of bring to the front of the mind the idea that children are they are very special, and that there's some grand, because this has to do with religion, and religion has to do with purpose. This kind of makes you think of children are something larger than other normal things. Uh, they are the fruit of the womb. They are a reward, and they are heritage from the Lord. So they hold a lot of weight. So that kind of shows us what the starting place Emily is coming from. She deals with this idea of parenthood. She sees it as a very important thing. So she then goes on to talk about her experience trying to conceive and failing at it, and how she wanted to go on fertility medicine, and how that whole process was very emotionally draining. Um, and then she talks about the decision to adopt and how it fit really well with her. It just seemed to click as something that she would like to do. And she says that she wanted to adopt two children, twins from Africa, and specifically Ethiopia. And so she travels to Ethiopia, and she finds these two twins, and she brings them back to the United States. She then talks about her experience in her identity as a mother, and her identity to herself, perceived by herself and perceived by other people. And this section of the chapter is called Counterfeit, and it kind of sums up the imposter syndrome that she experiences, where she's trying to find where the distinction is between a biological mother and a adoptive mother, and how this is something that she struggles with a lot. And she is the adoptive mother. She does all of the tasks of a mother and fills the role, and she herself still questions it. She then goes on to talk about how that could be perceived from an outside perspective, and that she experiences a lot of other moms who kind of reveal that they too wonder what is the boundary between, like, what makes a mother a mother. Is it a blood connection, or is it just the experience of uh, being a maternal figure to someone? Is there essentially something deeper to this role other than just doing the part of filling the role? And so she says that she worries that her maternity is an illusion, and that her friends seem to kind of reflect this idea that they're thinking about as well. But then she says that she makes an interesting analogy where she says giving birth and having kids that are adopted is similar to having a giant wedding and just being married, which kind of implies that the giving birth part is obviously important because that's how you have a kid to raise, but that it's kind of equivalent to a ceremony, and that the ceremony doesn't actually change the experience that you have after the ceremony, and that both people are having to do the same job and fill the same role. She then talks about her experience of she then talks about her experience of how she explains the idea that her children are adopted to her children. She says that their mother is to her kids. She says that their mother is she is their heavenly mother. She is always going to be with them, and she will always be a part of their lives and their story. But that Emily is their earthly mother, someone who is there to do the job of a mother, which is to do the real nitty-gritty of teaching lessons, forming habits, and taking care of someone. She then goes on in the next section called Romance to talk about the process of teaching her children about being adopted, and how she has the option of either sugarcoating it, straight up lying about it, and just being honest about it. She says that she knows a lot of people that think it's the smartest move is to just not mention the fact that the children are adopted. But I think Emily, this wouldn't work for her, particularly because she is such an expressive person, and she would need to express to these children stories about how she came to raise them. But if she were to lie, she would have to fabricate stories about what the childbirth was like, what it was like being pregnant, how they planned it, how they came up with the names, and she says that that is ultimately and very clearly to her a much worse process of raising her children, and she sees the kind of risk of being honest to be more worth it than just lying about it. So she talks about her experience of raising the kids as being honestly their adopted mother, and what that's like, and how that is kind of confusing to them at sometimes, but ultimately it does not degrade their dynamic at all. She then talks about the experience of what these kids have by being adopted. She says that she went to Ethiopia, or I apologize. She says that the Ethiopian liaison that helped them to adopt their children, I guess, was visiting the United States, and he was very impressed with the way that Americans preserve their culture and tell stories. And he says that you Americans know how to preserve a story. I thought that was really interesting because here in America we have a lot of qualms about how we preserve our stories. But maybe that just boils down to what stories we choose to preserve, because we are uh, a country that really loves our national narratives and our stories. Um, but she says that this kind of ties into the children's heritage, because um, they might be worrying their whole lives that they have less heritage, they have less connection to their mother and to their homeland. But in a way, Emily kind of ends the chapter by saying that they actually have more heritage than most children, because they have the one that they're being raised in the present, and they will always have one that in the future they can always be learning about. And that is a even greater way to connect to their past. And that's basically what the chapter is about. It's kind of talking about these trying to figure out what would be best for these children that are from a different country, and are having to kind of figure out how this adds to their identity in good ways and in bad ways. And Emily hardly touches on race in this chapter, especially since it's very interesting because her children are black. And so it just goes to show that there is so much to take into consideration when you're thinking about a child's feelings and identity and family and past and everything. So much has to be taken into consideration when raising a child. She doesn't even touch on the fact of how other people will see it. She's just trying to figure out, how do my kids see themselves? How do my kids relate to their past? That she's not even able to address the fact that for some people, the fact that her children are black will be enough for them to make assumptions and create a story about her children for her and for them. So it's something that she doesn't really talk about, but I think that just shows how much that plays a role, that even though it's so important, she can't write a whole chapter about it. Maybe she will in the future. I'm not sure. Another thing that I thought was really interesting about what she touches on in this chapter is how the dynamic kind of parallels to the broader story of Black Americans, because they are in a way historically adopted into our country, and they have kind of dual identities, if not themselves, then what is placed on by other people. And that I thought it was really cool how she talks about how that's not a bad thing in the case of her daughters. They're actually richer for it, because they have more culture in reach to relate to. So I thought that was really interesting. Another thing that I thought was kind of interesting was the experience of Emily trying to think, is she a mother? Is she as much of a mother as other mothers? And how it's this weird thing where, of course, she's a mother. What else would she be if she's not their mother? But it just, if you're not lining up with other people's narrative of what a mother is, it's ultimately going to be extremely hard for even you to accept yourself as a mother. And I think that plays into a lot of different aspects. I think Emily is ultimately commenting on the power of narratives and how she is living an unexplored narrative, and how, since it is less explored and less discussed, it's hard for her to have a firm place on which she experiences motherhood, or at least talks about experiencing motherhood. I thought it was a really great chapter. I look forward to reading more, and that's the end of my analysis. Thank you.